Greetings, this is Alex Sheremet, coming to you from the future, where nothing makes sense and everything remains undecided. You are now where I was 12 months ago, grappling with the prospect of yet another Trump term as the world casually spins out of control. After Kamala Harris entered the race, I said her campaign was at the mercy of timing, with a list of events likely to be in Trump's favor by Election Day. These included a mixed-up economy, 2 failed wars, and the party's erosion with its base. I argued Democrats lacked the tools to deal with national crises, and after failing to restrain Israel, that Benjamin Netanyahu would throw the election to Donald Trump. This was before Trump lost the debate to Kamala Harris, before Israel expanded its war into Lebanon, before a late spending blitz solidified Trump in the swing states. These are important events in any election, but equally important was Harris herself, who talks and behaves in ways that winning Democrats do not. She evaded the media for weeks, then proved unable to answer direct questions. Kamala's first interview was strictly edited and featured Tim Walz as chaperone. Her gaffes would make it into comedy routines by increasingly hostile liberals. Trump defined Kamala because Kamala failed to define herself, even as she spent millions on her image and likeness. Meanwhile, Trump and JD Vance were everywhere, earning more media than paying for it. Put another way, the trajectory had already been set. Kamala Harris took too long to distance herself from Joe Biden and refused to make concessions to her base. She had no explanation for her shifting positions and often took no position at all. By contrast, Donald Trump's vision was obvious. It is true some were unhappy with the first Trump term, yet many more remembered a time of low inflation and relative peace. Abortion rights energized Democrats, but not enough to reverse Trump gains. More pressing was the economy and illegal immigration, and while the latter first peaked right before COVID, it was COVID which allowed Trump and Biden to impose harsh border controls. Once these rules expired, Joe Biden was blamed for a border crisis invisible to most blue state voters. Until, of course, red states began to bus migrants into blue cities, thus radicalizing them.
Black people who have been hurt continuously by the city and country it loves, it ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else.
We don't want to have to recall anybody. We don't want to have to protest anybody, but we are not going to be ignored, Brandon.
As a result, Trump increased his vote share with almost every demographic. Indeed, the Democratic Party had now become so toxic that even Muslim voters looked past Trump's Muslim ban. And what did they see as they looked past? Probably nothing, which is a still more rational choice than voting for the headlines and the images to which they'd been subjected. Received wisdom says debates don't matter, yet 2024 had not one but 3 crucial debates. The first forced Joe Biden to drop out as the party's billionaires threatened to cut funding. In the second, Donald Trump was baited into making absurd claims for record viewership. The third saw the debut of JD Vance, who had been presented as an unlikable, inarticulate loser, only to beat a nervous Tim Walz and win over a chunk of the electorate. Yet it was the Trump-Harris debate which ought to be remembered, not just for Trump's comments about cat-eating Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, but for Kamala's cynicism. She laughed at Trump from the podium, then sat down to castigate Trump with a small group of journalists. Kamala would milk Trump's comments for weeks, yet refused to hold a rally in Springfield or be photographed anywhere near real Americans. She feared being seen alongside Haitian men with thick accents, feared to solicit their opinions, feared to look like she was giving America's resources away. Of course, since her campaign depended on the success of the Biden administration, she only fed the idea that the pie was in fact shrinking and that migrants were to blame. Kamala was happy to stick up for Haitians in a zero-stakes environment, yet communicated she would not actually fight for them. The same dynamic would soon play out with black voters, who sought party concessions only to get scolded at the ballot box. Trump's words invited ridicule, but were not the turning point liberals claimed. Those tired of words, both Trump's and Kamala's, would stay home and make memes instead. Yet the memes were not obviously critical of Trump and only drowned out Kamala Harris, who had no great nor iconic moments of her own. She did offer signs, however, such as her infamous "I'm speaking" retort to anti-genocide protesters.
You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
Or her laundering of cryptocurrency bribes as pro-black policy. As for Springfield, Ohio and its travails, it will continue to serve as a flagpole, but that's it. There is no need to campaign there, no need to enact legislation, no need to behave as if it is a real place. Because while Democrats poison the liberal brand, Republicans are digging a pit which is too dark and too mesmerizing to not fall into. A key detail from the 2024 cycle is how similar the party's language and strategy were in 2016. Liberals appeared arrogant again, rallying behind a celebrity-first campaign which left Democrats millions of dollars in debt. Anytime Trump had a bad day, the election was set to be over, while causes for alarm, such as a Gallup poll indicating more Republicans than Democrats for the first time since Ronald Reagan, got ignored. Positive moments, like Trump working at a McDonald's, were dismissed as stunts. Convinced of their chances, Democrats pushed to bring on Bush-era Republicans, seemingly without consequence. Even as Muslims loudly proclaimed they'd not vote Harris without a change in Gaza, liberals called this a bluff. Then Trump won Michigan by 80,000 votes when its 250,000 Muslims rejected Harris. Talk of sexism and racism was especially patronizing this time around, as Michelle Obama accused men of turning women into, quote, collateral damage for their rage.
So, are you as men prepared to look into the eyes of the women and children you love and tell them that you supported this assault on our safety?
The Harris campaign ran condescending ads, such as the infamous "Man Enough to Vote" bellwether. America's best-known pollster, Nate Silver, even called someone a moron for questioning whether replacing Biden with Kamala was sufficient to win. As a result, Professor Alan Lichtman, author of 13 Keys to the White House, concluded Nate Silver doesn't have the faintest idea how to turn the keys. Then misapplied his own criteria to suppress the thought of a Trump victory. It is obvious then that the first Trump administration scrambled some brains. Many could not accept that their world had changed, or at least required a new strategy. Pretty soon, liberals receded into the past, just like MAGA before them. However, it wasn't some mythical period which they sought, but specific moments from their own lives. Bill Clinton campaigned on Kamala's behalf, reminding Democrats of the heyday of the 1990s, which included everything from the unipolar moment to an actually useful tech boom. This reinforced Joe Biden's story that America would once again defeat Russia. It gave AI and the tech bubble a historical sheen, with Obama unleashed to remind voters of the optimism of turning points. Dick Cheney might be unpopular, but if your youth was spent protesting the Iraq War, isn't his endorsement the ultimate vindication? Perhaps not, said the electorate, which will soon extend this answer to Trump. For just as liberals are fixated on certain moments in time, MAGA has now ossified somewhere in the year 2019. It is distant enough to be recalled fondly, yet close enough to feel on the horizon again. The problem is that Trump runs as a revolutionary, then governs like a cog. He has admitted that he can't get grocery prices down, that there is too much bad momentum in the economy. In other words, Trump won the election, then adopted the laziest parts of Kamala's platform. This is not something an election can change. If anything, elections only legitimate it. And as long as the country remains wedded to one of two random outcomes, the trend will continue to trend. Neither party will confront this, however, as they prefer proximate causes to structural ones. Why did Kamala lose? There must be something about her. And there is. Can Democrats win without charisma or substance? In 2024, they sacrificed the latter, then tried to concoct the former. Now that the election is over, it is easy to judge how persuasive they were, how compelling.
Never let anyone take your joy from you. I call myself a joyful warrior. Right? Never let anyone take your joy from you. You do what you gotta do. And isn't that a wonderful way to live? To know you have purpose.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life, or in your life in the last 4 years that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, you know, if you've ever parented a child, you know you make lots of mistakes too. I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know, what can be unburdened by what has been. There are those who are unable to see what can be, but there are many more who are able to see what can be unburdened by what has been. Remember Venn diagrams, those three circles? Right. And then let's just see where they overlap. You will not be surprised because I have constructed a Venn diagram on this. Remember those three circles, how they overlap?